Welcome to the CompTIA Tech Jobs Report for November 2024. Let's jump right in. The recent release of the BLS Jobs Report shows employment across the U.S. economy increased 12,000 new positions, which is a bit disappointing, but let's turn into the report to find out more about that. The national unemployment rate was unchanged at 4.1%. For the tech perspective, we're going to turn to CompTIA's Chief Research Officer, Tim Herbert. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Andrea.
So tell us what happened this month.
Unusual is probably the best way to characterize it. Scanning many of the news headlines, there were references to distortions in the data, muddied data, or noise in the data. And it did catch a lot of people off guard because it was a pretty significant dip. But despite this, tech employment held firm. So it was one of the bright spots in a otherwise unusual jobs report. And much of this was attributed to the two severe hurricanes that affected numerous states. And the BLS also cited in their reporting that the labor market strike probably had an effect as well. So it is likely that much of the numbers across the economy will rebound next month. But nonetheless, it is something that we just have to accept for what it is. Looking at the tech employment figures, we do see that jobs across the economy increased by 70,000. And that is a fairly robust number. And it is a reminder that even if we have, say, weakness in one area of the country or in certain sectors, it can often be offset by hiring in other sectors. And it also speaks to just the diversity of tech employment across the economy, as well as we should probably acknowledge that there may be an element of many tech jobs provide the opportunity for remote work. So unlike, say, construction or working in hospitality, positions that are directly affected if there is some type of severe weather event, usually that's not the case with tech employment. The tech unemployment rate held steady at 2.6%. In comparison, the national rate is just over 4%. So tech is still a relatively tight labor market. And that is something that many employers, they do have to keep that in mind when they are recruiting, especially for certain types of positions or skills. And then we should acknowledge that tech industry employment, and this is hiring at the company level, so all of the employees within a tech company, that did slip a little bit. And it is possible that it was affected by the weather events that I just mentioned. There are over 100,000 tech businesses across Florida, the southern states, North Carolina. So it may affect how they're thinking about hiring, or even if they put hiring on hold, it potentially could show up, and maybe that affected the employment figures there. The tech hiring intent numbers, and this is what we refer to as job listings or job postings. And we work with our partner Lightcast to analyze this data. It increased by 223 new employer job postings for the month. And it did fall back slightly versus last month. But 223 is still the second largest month this year. So we're still at the near high point in terms of hiring. Year to date, there have been over 2 million job postings by employers for a range of different technology occupations. So we do continue to see, after the dip that we experienced last year, generally hiring intent has been trending upward. So all things considered, given the unusual circumstances in the data, tech held up quite well.
So with hiring intent, let's continue with that theme. What's the longer term outlook for tech employment? That's what everyone wants to know.
Anytime we talk about workforce trends, it's really important to provide context and perspective. And at times, it can be difficult to interpret the numbers, especially if you're only looking at it on a monthly basis. So one of the best ways to provide that type of perspective is to lengthen the time horizon. And you can do that both looking historically as well as looking ahead. And in the accompanying chart, you do see a 10-year snapshot of tech employment growth. And it is a positive growth curve. We continue to expect that tech will grow on many fronts. And this is a function of the economy grows, companies expand their operations. Much of this is driven by technology, so they invest in new systems, new applications. And then there is a corresponding increase in the tech workforce. But in addition to that, it's really important to also account for companies have to backfill for retirements. Every year, a portion of the tech workforce retires. There's also a segment that may leave for family reasons. They may go back to school. They may decide that they want a career change into a completely new field. And then there's also the component that we refer to as talent mobility. And this could be a situation where someone gets a promotion. They move from, say, a network administrator into a cybersecurity engineer job role, which it's a great opportunity. The person grows, the company benefits, but it does mean that you have to backfill then for the network position. And this is a healthy dynamic across the tech labor market. We want people to grow. We want them to gain experience, additional training, additional certification. They move into new job roles, but it does mean that oftentimes the people filling in the vacancies, they have to be trained up, or they have to be essentially coached to be prepared for the new job role. And on an aggregate basis, we project tech to grow at about 2.2 times the national employment growth rate. And this is a really important contextual point. As I mentioned, sometimes it can be difficult to know, is a growth rate, is it high, is it low? But tech is growing much faster than most occupation fields across the labor market. So it is a sign, again, of just how technology now underpins so much of our economy. On a numeric job basis, meaning how many new positions will either be created due to growth, or these are positions that companies have to prepare for because these are retirements they have to fill. The categories that will drive most of this growth revolve around software, and that covers a lot of different types of software and web development positions. Tech support, followed by systems analysts, systems engineers, so essentially keeping all of the applications, all of the different complexities across an organization's tech stack running smoothly. We continue to see the growth of the data analyst, data science position, all things data, one of the hottest fields right now. And then lastly, network administration and engineers. And again, this is on a volume basis. If we were to look at it on a percent change basis, cybersecurity would rank number 2. And one of the reasons behind that is for a lot of companies, cybersecurity is both a dedicated job role, but it's also a skill. Just about every tech professional has cybersecurity responsibilities. For smaller size companies, they're not going to be in a position to have an extensive team of cyber professionals. So oftentimes, cyber is a responsibility of tech support, of network engineers. The CIO often has responsibilities for governance and some of the other functions around compliance. So if we were to view cybersecurity on its skills basis, it would be much larger. And again, it's reflected just in terms of the job roles themselves. So again, one of the big takeaways here is just how integrated technology is today and how employers really have to think about it holistically. They're not just investing in, say, developers or coders, or even the emerging field of artificial intelligence. But they're also investing in the support functions, the infrastructure. Without robust infrastructure, no amount of investment will deliver the return that companies expect. And then, of course, you also see the data component, which powers so much of the value, and it really informs how companies derive actionable insights, how they fine-tune their products, and how they really serve their customers best.
You referenced several concepts of tech jobs, and it's important to think about these are jobs that sit within a job family. They're related to other categories. How should job seekers and employers think about this concept? And you have a really nice graph that I think is just so beautifully done. So if you could just explain to this that concept for job seekers and employers who are listening and watching.
One of the strengths of the tech workforce is that it is so expansive. There are so many different career pathways. There are so many different opportunities to start in one point and to end up in a completely different point. There are opportunities for career changers that may have transferable skills. The trade-off, though, it can be overwhelming and it can be confusing for both employers and job seekers. As you can see in the accompanying graph, there's a lot of different moving parts. So CompTIA does publish a number of resources and guides to help provide some of the underlying detail. In our jobs report, we tend to focus on some of the higher level job roles or job families. And we often don't get into many of the underlying details. But if you were to think about some of these different job families, so for example, within software development, there are close to 30 different job roles. And then if you look at specific job titles, the list goes on and on. So this does provide anyone beginning, usually they may start with foundational skills, they may start in an entry-level job role, and then typically over time, they may specialize. They may end up focusing on Java or Python or any number of coding languages. They may move into DevOps. They may move into web development or UI, UX. And then, of course, some of the emerging fields around artificial intelligence, which is essentially, it's a software-driven type of technology. And the same goes with some of the other fields, like even tech support. Sometimes we talk about that in somewhat generic terms, but there's a lot of different job roles within tech support, from traditional help desk to field service and repair. There's still so much hardware that requires maintenance. And a lot of times now, especially that technology continues to expand its footprint well beyond what we would consider just the computer, but to many peripherals, many types of other connected devices, IoT. So there is a need to actually be in the field and to be able to provide that level of maintenance. Cybersecurity, I think, is another great example where we often talk about cybersecurity, but increasingly there are specialized fields within cybersecurity, from penetration testing to IT auditing to governance to security architecture, really thinking about how to design secure systems from the ground up. So for job seekers and anyone actually in tech thinking about their next move, it does, I think, it's worth investing some time to really think about where your skills may match, where your interests may lie, where you may want to go next in your career, because typically there is more opportunity than what many would expect. For employers, it does mean that they really need to take a structured approach. And a lot of employers, they recognize that workers value career guidance. They value support for training, for professional development. But it does require providing a roadmap. Employers that do it best provide this guidance. They're not just providing, say, an account to an online learning platform and wishing the employee good luck. It does take some assistance, and it does take some structure. Simply having a list of hundreds of different jobs is not that helpful. So resources such as this, and I will mention CompTIA also published recently an updated certifications roadmap, which provides the training and certification complement to the job roles. So it can really help to break down a somewhat overwhelming landscape, and it can really help both job seekers and employers to map their next steps.
I think this is a great visual to be able to see. So thank you again, Tim, as always, for sharing your insights with us. We will wrap here for this month's report. So thank you again.
Thanks, Andrea.